Scott, and I'm the Director of Exhibits and Programs at Levine Museum of the New South. It is my honor to welcome you to Shaping Charlotte and tonight's important discussion centered on our latest exhibit, Lumbee Indians, A People and a Place. This photographic exhibit, curated by Nancy Strickland Fields, Director of the Museum of the Southeast American Indian, is a visual narrative of the Lumbee that illustrates a history of family and home, land and water, faith and memory. Our conversation this evening will delve deeper into these themes and explore the Lumbee experience here in Charlotte. The voices represented in tonight's panel are often underrepresented in the larger narrative of our local history, and it is our hope that you will walk away this evening with a deeper appreciation for and understanding of the Lumbee tribe and how they have shaped Charlotte and beyond. Now it is my privilege to introduce tonight's moderator, Nancy Strickland Fields. Nancy is a member of the Lumbee tribe and a Charlotte native. She's also the director of the Museum of the Southeast American Indian. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It is an honor to share this platform with the Levine Museum of the New South. This opportunity to have a presence here is a long time coming, so thank you so much. And thank you all for joining this curatorial conversation about the exhibition Lumbee Indians, A People and a Place. And I would like to say a special thank you to all of the Levine staff who have made this opportunity possible. Thank you all so much. Before we get started, I want to take a moment and I would like to acknowledge the original Southerners, Native peoples who have inhabited this place that we now call Charlotte home for thousands of years, the Gotari, Catawba, and Cherokee peoples. We acknowledge your land and honor your land as sacred space. I also want to acknowledge in a good way the thousands of Native people from across Turtle Island that call Charlotte home today. Charlotte is a beautiful place to call home, and we appreciate the Levine creating space to help tell the contemporary story of Native peoples as well. And lastly, in my acknowledgments, I would like to honor the memory of my dear friend and a pillar of the Charlotte community, Ms. Earlene Stacks, who was also Lumbee. Ms. Stacks was a successful entrepreneur in Charlotte who founded and owned Preferred Parking in Uptown Charlotte, which is also the museum's parking. Sadly, she passed away in October. She was very much looking forward to participating in this panel, but we definitely know that she is with us in spirit. At this time, I would like to introduce the panelists, all of which I'm honored to have known for a long time, and I consider them great friends. Their full bios are on the Levine's page. I think that's right, Eric, or in the event link, but I just wanted to give a little bit about them. So Chip Cavan is a Tuscarora native of Robeson County. He is a landscape photographer, and his work offers a unique perspective into Tuscarora and Lumbee culture in Robeson County.
Hello.
We have Travis Dove. He is a political photojournalist who also lives in Charlotte, and he took the really astounding portraits that are part of the exhibition. Rebecca LaClaire is Lumbee. She is the chairperson of Metrolina Native American Association in Charlotte. And we have Brandon Lowery, who's also Lumbee. Again, this is Lumbee Indians, A People and a Place. He is the managing member of Continental Chemicals in Charlotte, and he is a native Charlottean as well. And last but not least, we have Lori Winfree, who is Lumbee. She is an enterprise account director for Salesforce.com in Charlotte, but she is a native Charlottean. So thank you all so much for participating in this panel. This is kind of a historic moment for us, so I appreciate sharing the time with you all. Real quickly, to get us anchored around who are Lumbee people for our visitors who might not know. Lumbee people, we are a tribe of Indian people located in Robeson County, North Carolina, which is the southeastern part of the state. There are over 55,000 enrolled members in the tribe, and we are the largest tribe east of the Mississippi. To learn more information about Lumbee people, please visit their website at lumbeetribe.com. And there's all kinds of good information to be found there. Now I want to switch over and talk a little bit about how this exhibit came into being. And this exhibit did not take kind of the usual curatorial methods, the way that exhibits are created. This exhibit really sort of created and almost curated itself. It was born out of a Washington Post article that was published on August the 20th in 2018. And the article focused on the question, what makes someone Native American? And of course, that question was centered around Lumbee federal recognition and the wonderful Heather McMillan Nakai in her court cases about getting federal recognition. So I received a copy of the magazine and I read the article, and as I went through the pages, the writing was exquisitely, just breathtakingly illustrated by these really poignant portraits of Lumbee people. And I've grown up hearing, I think we all have, about federal recognition our entire lives. And at this point in life, as indicated by the gray hair, I'm just kind of worn out about it. And as a museum curator, I feel like it is distracting from who we are as Indian people, and not just for Lumbee, I think for all. I could speak for North Carolina state recognized tribes. And so the more I read, the more I'm using the word dishonorable, that there could be other adjectives, but the content of the article felt to me dishonorable about Lumbee people. And I couldn't get past the power of the photography. It stuck with me for a few days. And at the same time, my friend Chip Cavan is posting these allegorical Robeson County landscapes every morning. And as I'm drinking coffee and watching the news, these photos were in my Facebook feed, and they were really the highlight of my day. It's a really wonderful start. He still does that, by the way. And like the portraits, I found a sense of purpose and resilience, a human quality to his work. And then also during the same week, I was here at the museum working in the collections with some of our older photographs. And as I looked at the faces that mirrored the faces in the Washington Post article, I noticed some of the same places that Chip was posting in his photos. And the exhibit idea came to mind. Place these three bodies of photography together as a visual narrative that would articulate Lumbee culture and identity. So I reached out to Travis and Chip, and after some really good conversations, they both agreed to the idea of curating their work into an exhibit. And then together, we curated an exhibit that opened at the Museum of the Southeast American Indian in the summer of 2019. And the full curatorial statement is available on the Levine's website, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in the program. About 6 months or so later, I had a serendipitous conversation with the Levine president, Catherine Hill, about the exhibition and the potential of it coming to the Levine. And I shared with her that for, I think, over 15 years, I have been trying to get my foot in the door at the Levine because our story complements and is a vital part of the story that the Levine tells about Southern people from Reconstruction forward, especially our shared experience with Jim Crow. Out of that meaningful conversation, we were able to bring the exhibit to the Levine, and just over the moon about this opportunity. So that is how the exhibition came to be. I invite everyone to go out and see the exhibit. It really is beautiful. But I want to talk with the panelists about having your work in the exhibit. And I know that, or Chip and Travis, I know that this is a little bit of a departure from how you normally use your work or engage with your work. So I want to start with Travis. Can you discuss your work, your career, and also tell us a little bit about what was your assignment from the Washington Post for the article? It sent you deep into Lumbee country.
Yeah, yes, it did. So yeah, I work as a freelance photojournalist. I grew up just down the road here in Concord, North Carolina. So, after several years of moving up and down the East Coast, my wife strongly influenced me to come back to Charlotte. So yeah, we're here now for the long haul. But yeah, I work for a lot of national media outlets. Most of my work is concentrated in the Southeast, but sometimes I do travel outside of that bubble. And the subject matter really does sort of run the board. for me. I'm a regular contributor to the New York Times, and I cover all types of stories for them. It could be politics, it could be the style section, but I also work for a range of other national media outlets. So from Rolling Stone to AARP. So I do a lot of very different types of work, but it's all in the editorial realm. So yeah, this particular project came to me through a photo editor who I really admire. His name is Dudley Brooks. He reached out to me to see if I'd be available to work on this project about the Lumbee tribe and their struggle for federal recognition. And although I was somewhat familiar with the story, being from North Carolina, I wasn't as exhausted by it as I'm sure some of you are. But yeah, I was really excited, of course, to take it on. They were centering it on Heather Nakai, as you mentioned. Of course, Heather's awesome, but they wanted more, photographically than just, one portrait of her. So they wanted to, tell the story more broadly of the Lumbee people, and the Lumbee homecoming seemed like a great opportunity to just see some Lumbee cultural elements on full display and meet a lot of people at the same time. So yeah, for those of you who are listening and who are unfamiliar, like I was at one time with the Lumbee homecoming, it's basically like this week-long reunion where the Lumbee people, Lumbee population, I guess I should say, in Pembroke, North Carolina, sort of multiplies, and it feels like several holidays sort of get condensed into just a few days. And there's a parade, and there's pageants, and there's a powwow, and there's art, and there's fireworks, and all the stuff is going on. Yes. And since that didn't seem like enough to photograph, I thought maybe I should just do some portraits as well. But yeah, I thought maybe the portraits might be kind of an opportunity to sort of speak collectively about the beauty of the community and the beauty of the culture. So I wanted to make it, as simple and as natural as I possibly could. So I basically just bought a plain white canvas that I found from an art supply store. And I placed it up against the shaded side of the library. That would be like a high traffic area, but after the parade happened, but not on display for everyone. And so I just asked people as they passed by if they would want to sit down on the stool for a minute and have their picture taken for this story. And that's sort of where it began. And of course, I popped into the museum. Nancy and some others there were helpful in connecting me with a nearby church where I could do a sort of similar thing after the church service. And they connected me with other members of the community. So yeah, it just sort of expanded from that point.
I think that, in the article, the portraits were just, I think you had two standalone pieces. At least that's how I looked at the Washington article. But tell me a little bit about what does it mean to have your work featured in this exhibit? So it's really taking on a different meaning and context from its, you initially shooting it.
Yeah. Obviously I work in journalism. I very rarely have my work exhibited in museums. So this is different for me. But like working in journalism, I've always done my best to tell an honest story and do it in a compelling way. And you're just kind of supposed to put it out there and get used to the idea that people are going to have their own reaction to it. And they're going to have their own reaction to your work. And after it's published, you have to kind of be okay with what that reaction is, whether it's good or bad. But, I'd be lying if I said that it didn't sting a little bit for me personally if somebody just said that they hated it. But yeah, when you reached out about including some of these pictures in this exhibit as part of this larger show, it was really like a wonderful feeling of affirmation that like I had done something good. And yeah, that's the type of thing that really, it keeps me going. And yeah, I won't forget it. So yeah, thank you very much for including me in it.
Thank you for the work. You talk about affirmation. So that leads me to my next question. In this format of an exhibit, what do you want people to take away when they see your photography? What do you want them to see? Or what would you like for them to see that may be something that you've seen since you've connected with the community?
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not the first person to photograph, people on a white backdrop. It's like a tried and true tradition in photography, a powerful one. But yeah, like I would say, if this resonates with anyone, then I feel like that's kind of a testament to how special the Lumbee people are and how unique, as a group and as individuals, Lumbee people are. And that, maybe that's something that us as non-natives should, recognize and elevate, regardless of whether, the federal government does.
There you go. Well said. I agree with you. Totally. I mean, again, that was kind of the impetus for the show.
Yeah.
Well, this is the first time. I know we have tried several times to bring you and Chip together, but this is kind of the first time that you guys have actually connected and about your work together. So hopefully we can get you together at the show and meet. But I think everyone has, at least when it was here at this museum, and I'm sure they're in Charlotte, the vignettes really work well together. These three separate images really just become one narrative. And Chip, your landscapes really have this human quality in the way that they inform culture, Lumbee, Tuscarora culture and identity. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work and what inspires you, especially like 7 o'clock in the morning when you're taking these incredible landscapes on your way to work?
I guess I don't want to sound cliche, but it's just more so of stopping to smell the roses. I've just always been the type to more so when I would go out to just pay attention to my surroundings. I look up more than I look down. Colors, contrast, shading, all those things seem to always catch my eye. So to me, the creation and the nature that's around us, it all seems beautiful. And here, especially in Robeson County, the land seems a bit rugged. Even though with all the fields and the manicured fields and the crop planting and everything, there still seems something untamed about all of those qualities of it. And that's something that I just always try to strive to catch at all times. It's something that stood out to me since I was a child on my way down.
I mean, we're looking at some of the images right now, and they really are breathtaking. These images aren't included in the exhibit. These are recent photos that you've taken. The ones in the exhibit are equally as breathtaking. Yes, and please keep them coming every morning. What is it for you to have your work in this show? What do you want people to take away when they see your work, especially as they're connected to people themselves?
A beauty and simplicity. I think that's really the biggest part for me, is that it's the things that we overlook, the things we pass every day that seem mundane or repetitive. When you take the time to actually pay attention to them, there's something much deeper there. There's something more miraculous there.
Yes, I think we all we're including you in this bunch, Travis. I think we all feel that way. That kind of a sense of connectedness to place, and as most of us growing up in Charlotte, at least myself and Chip and Lori and Brandon, there's an undeniable magnetism about Robeson County that just pulls you home. It's just, I know it's an arbitrary line, but when you cross over that Robeson County line, you get a sense of belonging and place. And I've never been able to put it into words other than magnetism. It's like this, you're connecting to something that's greater than you are, but it's very ancient and real. So I think that's the essence of your photography as well. Yeah. Rebecca, and forgive me if I feel like I'm rolling through these questions. We only have an hour, and we could talk a lot, but we'll keep circling back through. Photographs of your brother and your sister-in-law are in the exhibit. How do you think the photos will connect with audiences?
I think those photos will connect with the audiences. I think one, they will look at a strong Native couple.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the first things they will see. With Eustacia, they're going to look at a strong Native woman. They see her feather, they see her regalia, her earrings, her jewelry, and I think they see a strong Lumbee Native American woman. And I think with my brother, they see a modern Native American Lumbee man enjoying Lumbee homecoming. His shirt was the 50th Lumbee homecoming. And that's what I think they see. I think they see strong, young Native American people, Lumbee couple who are strong. And I think that's just the essence of our people who are strong people. But to see them in a picture like that, and to see her with her reveal that she would use when she walks into a powwow, or even when she speaks to a educated others about her, that's what she's doing in the station.
And they both are role models in the community. Your brother Richard works in Indian education. There's that photo, which is so fun. I think those shirts, Scuffletown Suppliers created those shirts, and they sold out like hotcakes so fast. So I love that Travis caught that. I mean, that's the billboard right there, 50th anniversary. So that was really cool. But Eustacia was a former Miss Lumbee, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Former Miss Lumbee. And her daughter, my niece, is a former Miss Lumbee. So they are the first mother and daughter.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. I didn't know.
Yeah. So that's what I say about my brother and his family, just a very strong Lumbee family. We're very proud of their culture.
They definitely do good work in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of students, a lot of your brother's students, when they came through the museum and they recognized him from behind immediately, and they were like, "Hey, there's Mr. Richard. That's so cool," and really got a kick out of that. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And the great thing about Richard too, I mean, a lot of people don't realize he was just elected to the Lumbee Tribal Council, so he'll start that in January. So
very good. Congratulations to him.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Now I want to move over to Lori, and this is one of my favorite photographs in the collection. This is of Mr. Lonnie Revels, who I had the wonderful honor of knowing in my childhood. He was such a great man. So when you look at this photograph of your grandfather, he was an important part of a Lumbee shared experience, which was tobacco farming. And tobacco farming really was a subsistence for us for a long time, and really shaped our lives. So many people, this image resonated with them because they remembered growing tobacco, working in tobacco fields, cropping tobacco, going to tobacco markets. But when you see this photograph, what do you see? You might be muted.
Gentle giant.
Gentle giant.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, a gentle giant. Grandpa actually grew up really, really poor. He was actually he was sent to work on what turned out to be my grandmother's farm. He only finished the fourth grade, but yet he sent 3 out of his 6 kids to college at a time when, there weren't a lot of scholarships for Lumbee Indians going to school. And Grandpa never forgot what it was like to be poor. I can remember going with Grandpa at Christmas time to, give food and whatever assistance that he could to families in the area where he grew up. He was just a good man. And if you notice, there are no weeds down in the bottom of that tobacco field either. So he also taught us a sense of pride that, you know, if any job worth doing is worth doing well, that, you know, you needed to always present your best self. And the funny thing is, my grandfather really never liked to leave Robeson County. Like, he would come to visit Charlotte to come to see us. And, you know, I had 2 other aunts that lived in the area, and he might spend a night at each house, and then he would head back home. And his excuse was, well, you know, this was after he was a retired farmer, and he just had, like, you know, 6 acres of a garden. But, you know, the farm needed tending, and so he needed to get back. But, you know, I come from a family of people who had participated in all levels of government in order to try to further Indian education. And, you know, my uncle was a city councilman in Greensboro, where Chip grew up. And my grandfather, even though he hated to leave Robeson County, he actually did, you know, leave Robeson County to go with a group of Lumbee farmers to protest, you know, taxes and allotments on the tobacco. And so, you know, he was one of those people that, despite his not necessarily fear, but just dislike of leaving Robeson County, he would even do that for his people and his fellow farmers. So
He was a wonderful man. He was just so gentle and so sweet. And
oh, he was.
And
Yep.
I appreciate you sharing the story. And I'm so, it was really important for me to include his photograph. And when I was a kid, you know, my mother was a little bit older when she had me, and I would sit and listen to kind of grown folks' conversations, as they would say, which I always found very interesting. And I can remember one time, and I was very young, so I'm sure I've framed these, it stuck with me, and I'm sure I've framed this memory in a different way as an adult, but I can remember them talking about going to tobacco market. And I remember your granddad saying, you know, when I went to the tobacco market, it was the one time that I was treated like a man, where somebody would look me in my eyes and shake my hand, and we could negotiate business. And of course, this was during, you know, I would assume during segregation, probably during the 40s or the 50s. And that always stuck to me, because I thought, well, what does he mean by that? And of course, now having the understanding about Jim Crow and what segregation did here, I understand what he was talking about. But that really is, for me, the importance of having this photograph in this exhibition, so we can talk about Native people and Jim Crow and what tobacco did for us as a people. So he really gave us a wonderful story and a wonderful experience, a shared experience among many, many people in the South. So, so with that, I'm gonna segue over with Brandon, and we've talked about this work. We've talked about the people. This is in Charlotte, a place that we grew up in. As a Charlottean with deep roots in family, of course, in Robeson County, what does it mean to you to have this exhibit at the Levine in Uptown Charlotte, in the center of one of the largest populations in the South?
Well, Nancy, I think you'll be able to resonate with this, that when people ask me where I'm from or where my hometown is, my answer is Charlotte. I was born here. I was raised here. I came back after college and started my career here, and I'm raising my family here. I'm a very proud Charlottean. But the word home has a different context. The word home to me is still rooted right there in Robeson County. So for me, this exhibit is a wonderful opportunity for a convergence of what feels like my hometown and my home together. When I came back from college, I lived in Uptown Charlotte. So it's a very special place to me. And to know there's an exhibit about, you know, both my family, my extended family, my tribe, it's just very moving.
Wonderful. Well, I think that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second, but, and there's Reggie Brewer, here's another Charlottean. I think that, we looked for representations of ourselves in different public spaces and to see how we were part of the community. And a lot of times, especially around the 70s and the 80s, the 60s, it was in silos. It might be in the neighborhoods we grew up in, like Dilworth, or the circles, our families that were connected to one another. But in terms of a wider kind of public acknowledgement, it was hard to find. And so I think that having an exhibition at the Levine, like you're saying, is really kind of bringing the best of both worlds together right there in Charlotte. And hopefully people will learn a little bit more about Lumbee people who, are their neighbors and their coworkers and a viable part of the fabric of the Charlotte community. So, well, with that, I want to segue to talk a little bit more about the Charlotte experience. And most of our families that came to Charlotte, particularly around the 50s. And again, a lot of these stories I grew up with, as many of us did, just kind of sitting around and hearing people talk. And I wanted to share real quickly, my mom, I grew up on Tremont Avenue in Charlotte in Dilworth. And she was a hairdresser. And she has a great story about two of her friends making a decision. I can't remember if it was a cotton field. I think it was a cotton field where they had been picking tobacco, and they had painted their fingernails red. And by the time they got to the end of the rows, their hands were so bloody from picking cotton. She said, I couldn't tell where the fingernail polish started and the blood ended. It was just so bad. And somehow or another, they had gotten a hold of maybe a newspaper or a magazine that advertised Southeastern Beauty College. And so, not sure of all the circumstances, but she and two of the other girls went to Charlotte and enrolled in Southeastern Beauty College and graduated. And she went on to have a very successful career as a hairdresser. In fact, this is a photo of her in a boarding house over by what's Carolina's Medical Center now. And she, I've always looked at this picture and thought, wow, they look kind of glamorous and they're just sitting around having a great time. But one of the funny things that, changed her identity is one of the teachers said, tell me your name again. And her first name was Erdl. And that teacher said, you're an Indian? And that's the ugliest name I've ever heard in my entire life. If you're going to be successful as an Indian in this business, you're going to have to change your name. She said, what's your middle name? And my mom said, Jane. And she said, from this day forward, you're Jane Oxendine. You're going to have a career as Jane. Don't ever call yourself Erdl in a hair salon. And she never did. So I always enjoyed her kind of sharing that story. And then, of course, we, as a teenager, we probably had too much fun with her first name, which I have a lot of respect for. But she was always, Jane Oxendine and then Jane Strickland. But I think we all have these really cool stories. And so, Brandon, I want to go back to you. And your dad really has one of the best stories about him coming to Charlotte. He was a well-known businessman, extremely successful in the chemical industry. And he, like my mom and many others, came to Charlotte under very humble circumstances. Can you share your father's story and maybe mix into that growing up in Charlotte? And what did you learn from both your dad and your mom that have led to your success today?
Sure. So the legend is he came to Charlotte with $17 in a shoe shine box, but I think that's mostly true. We do still have the shoe shine box, but so mom and dad came here in '64, right out of college, just looking for an opportunity to find jobs and economic prosperity. Mom was a school teacher, and dad started out as a door-to-door insurance salesman, and quickly learned that being a salesman came very natural to him, and moved on into pharmaceutical sales and then into chemical sales. In 1975, he took a kind of a huge risk, put all his chips on the table, and decided to start his own chemical distribution company. with a small business loan. And while they, had their growing pains, it was only 4 years later that Dad was named the North Carolina representative of Small Businessman of the Year. Got the chance to go meet President Carter with Mom. So that was a huge opportunity that came pretty quickly after he started the company. Business continued and it grew, became one of the top 100 companies in North Carolina in 1992. Dad was given an honorary doctorate in 95, and became a part of the Federal Reserve Board in 1999 under Alan Greenspan. So he had a prolific career. But one of the lessons that he and Mom taught us was that life balance. So even though his resume was very strong from a business standpoint, being his son and growing at the home, what I remember more was just being at every meal together. And that kind of leads me to my mother, which was really the anchor to the tie to Robeson County for me. And that's been kind of a consistent theme that Lumbee women to me have been the ones that carry our culture, they carry our history, and they keep us tied to each other and to the area. So really that was the most profound lesson that I got from both of them, was life balance and never kind of forget where you're from. I'm sure we'll get to let Lori talk about her mother, but that was another profound Lumbee woman in my life that was in every school that I was in, K through 12, as a part of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And I'll let Lori tell her full story, but she's a perfect example of how being Lumbee means you feel like you have 50 grandmothers, 50 aunts, and really a maternal sense that tying you to your culture. Yeah.
Your dad had a saying when he used to go give talks to different folks, and especially school groups or our Indian education group. And he said, I was Indian when Indian wasn't cool. That was kind of a play on a country song. Yeah. And, we know that all of our families really navigated some precarious times in Charlotte, good times and bad, both as they were getting footing in the community. What does it mean for you, or how do you see yourself as a Native person fitting into the Charlotte community today?
Well, to go back to the education piece, it's been recent, but I just became a part of the Indian Education Parent Committee. And that has been, again, very recent, but I think it's something I wish I had done long ago, because it really is the tie to our community that was here in Charlotte. I can still remember the meetings we had through Indian Education, through Metrolina, when we would all get together as kids, and it didn't matter what school we went to, because often you'd be the only Native student in your whole school. So you didn't really have a community during the school day, but it gave Native students a sense of community within the district, even though we weren't all in school in the same schoolhouse. We still kind of knew each other. I mean, I think most of us that grew up here went to different high schools, but we still all kind of graduated and knew each other, even if they were 5 or 6 years younger or older. The Native kids were all kind of tied to education. So I hope that that takes root and I can do more with that organization.
And we know Rebecca's a big part of that organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Well, thank you for sharing your dad and your family story. Now I want to go over to Chip, who took an interesting turn. And so Chip grew up between Greensboro and Charlotte. And Chip, you decided to move back to Robeson County very early in life. Can you tell us what inspired you to move back home, as we say?
This was always my second home. Even though I had a home in Charlotte, I always called this home. I always said, let's go down home. My mother kept me here frequently. Every other weekend, when there were potatoes to be hoed, we came down here and hoed potatoes. We shut corn. We picked cucumbers, shelled peas, picked pecans. So she kept me very involved here with the family. All of our holidays were here. I spent most of my summers here. So a lot of my best memories of childhood, they happened here, right here in Prospect. And so this place has always just felt more natural to me from a family sense than, anywhere else. So when I had the opportunity to move, I took the very first opportunity. That was right after high school.
Oh, wow. And went back home. Yeah.
I went back home. Yeah.
Do you think that Rosa had any influence, or Rosa Winfree had any influence on the importance of of Robeson County and home?
Oh my God, absolutely. Because I mean, just like through the education system and everything there, and how she kept all that anchored through the Indian education system, and attending those meetings, even my mother used to be involved in, even with Metrolina and all that, there was always a strong sense of community. I never felt torn away from Robeson County whenever I left Robeson County, because there's always a part of it in Charlotte, inside of our home, inside of the community that we had inside Charlotte, because we stayed in contact with the American Indian community inside Charlotte. We attended an American Indian church that was just pretty much all Lumbee. So we always were tied to the community through various aspects, especially even through Rosa.
Absolutely. So that was my good segue to Lori. We've talked a lot about your mom this evening, who was Rosa Revels Winfree, and she just absolutely devoted her life to Native students and Indian education program in Charlotte. And you could tell us about the exact dates, but she empowered countless students through Native culture, myself included. I would not be who I am today if it was not for Rosa Winfree inspiring me and holding me accountable to do something. Tell us about your mom and your dad and the family business of Indian education.
So mom was a school teacher for a number of years, and got the opportunity when they were building mom actually helped write the grant that brought Title IV to Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Once the grant was approved and they got started, it seriously took all of us. It wasn't, one of the things, I don't know if you know, that it's really, they would count the number of students, Native students in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school systems. And so money was allotted based on the number of students. Well, what happened a lot of times is teachers would just look at the classroom and decide who was Native and who wasn't. And so I actually ended up in a principal's office one year because the teacher was doing a black-white count, because we were in the days of forced busing. And so it became more important to actually monitor the number of black and white students. And I went to her and said, hey, you can't count me as white. And she said, but you're part white. And I was like, yeah, but my mom will kill me if you count me as a white student, because her funding comes from you identifying me as a Native student. And she said, Lori, I don't understand. There's not an other on this count. It's either black or white. And I said, really, you can't count me as a white student. My mom will kill me. And so she said, well, I don't know what to do other than send you to the principal's office, and then you can have that discussion with the principal. And I said, I'll be happy to have a conversation with the principal. That's a lot easier than having that conversation with my mom. And so it began a whole series in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools about being aware and asking kids to self-identify, because that was the way the program actually was funded. And so the program began in the mid 70s and carried on until probably the mom retired in the early 90s. And there's a picture, if they can show it. I just wanted to explain the family that we come from. And that is, there's a picture, and it's my mom and my dad. It is my cousin Bruce, my mom's cousin Bruce, who's also my cousin. But Bruce is actually ran North Carolina Indian Commission. That's my Aunt Ruth, who ran Metrolina Native American Association. And at the end is my Uncle Lonnie, who was on the Commission of Indian Affairs. And then when he passed away, my Aunt Ruth actually took his position. And so it was, my cousin Jennifer and I would laugh that when I would say, "Are you going home?" And she knew I wasn't talking about Greensboro, and I wasn't talking about Charlotte. We were talking home. To us was always North Carolina. Just like Chip said, my birthday is actually July 3rd. Do you think I ever had a birthday party in Charlotte? No. All my birthday parties were held at Lumbee Homecoming. And I can remember being, in my early 20s and swearing that I was never going to spend another birthday at Lumbee Homecoming. Where do I spend them as an adult? Lumbee Homecoming. It's just mom had a real sense that Indian children in large school systems were getting left behind. And so it was her mission to create a safe place for those students and their parents. She would actually work with parents to help them learn how to deal with a teacher or a principal, how to have conversations about, how to improve either behavior or studies and tests and things like that. The other thing, though, is that she realized that not only students in need, but also students who were Lumbees growing up without the necessary connections that you would normally get in Robeson County. So as Brandon was talking about, we all knew each other, and that was part of Mom's plan. She truly wanted us to have a connection not only to Robeson County and being Lumbee, but she wanted us to have a connection to each other. And one thing about Brandon's dad was that Mom would try to put together these events, and she never had enough funding. And so Dennis Lowery was my first introduction into Natives as their own philanthropist. And I truly think, at least Lumbee philanthropy to me began with Dennis Lowery, because Mom would call him about a student who needed clothes or about an event that she wanted to handle. And I can remember listening to the conversation and hearing Dennis go, okay, Rosa, how much money do you need? So it was just, I think it was a synergy. The two of them actually, along with, Wanda Carter and some others, truly brought Robeson County to Charlotte for us.
It really was. I mean, this is starting to feel a little bit like a family reunion. Maybe that was intentional, but I think it just really demonstrates how intentional the Native community is in Charlotte about staying connected and seeking one another out and being together. And Rebecca, that's a great point for you to share about Metrolina and the work that you do with Native community in Metrolina and bringing folks together.
Yeah, Metrolina, it was formed as an urban organization to support, the Native Americans, the American Indians that are in the area. And we consider Metrolina Mecklenburg County and all the counties that surround Mecklenburg County. And I was looking up the population today, and there's about 5.8% of the population of those counties are American Indians up here in this area. So there's a good amount of Native Americans. So that's what we're here for. We want, even when we talk to Coharie, Hollowad, Choctaw, Cherokee, it doesn't matter what tribe they come from, everybody will consider their home territory home. So Metrolina wants to feel like they're home away from home. We want people to call Metrolina and ask us where can they get such and such services or what can they do for us. But Metrolina is definitely involved in Indian Ed. We have the huge golf tournament every year, which is like a homecoming to everybody. The powwow but we've received numerous grants this year. So Metrolina is doing very well, and we just want all Native Americans in the area to reach out to us and know
Perfect.
that
And
we're
I think
here
your
to support
website is right there. So very good.
Yes.
Well, Travis, we're going to circle back around to you. And I know we've talked a lot about community. We've talked a lot about the exhibit. You're there in Charlotte. Since the article, do you feel like you've connected more with the Native community? And or how do you feel this exhibit will improve awareness about Native people in Charlotte? And I'm saying that just as a non-Native person that was
Yeah. I think this is like the third story I've worked on directly related to the Lumbee tribe, but it's largest in scope, but it's not comprehensive. So, I think when you think about the Lumbee tribe and really the story of just indigenous rights in general, it can feel, certainly as an outsider, can feel like very overwhelming and just big. But as a medium, I feel like photography is generally it's very approachable. So my real hope is that, this work is sort of a window for people to do a little bit more thinking. It's an approachable starting point. And maybe give them a little bit more curiosity. Maybe pick up a book. I started reading actually the Lumbee Indians in the Jim Crow South. Or check out the website, stuff like that. Just do a little bit more investigating on their own. So that's my hope for people. As far as my own experience, it certainly made me feel more connected. Actually, my daughter's best friend from preschool is a little Lumbee boy, and just being involved with this has given me a lot of curiosity about their family, to the point that they probably think I'm bordering on creepy, and I have to stop myself from asking too many questions. But yeah,
who's your people? Are you giving them?
But yeah, it's been special.
Well, we are just honored. I'm honored to share this experience with you all. And Chip and Travis, I really respect and appreciate your work. And, I think a lot of times art is created almost by the universe, not to sound too metaphysical here, but it facilitates a lot of goodwill and can really break down barriers in ways that conversations and words fail. So thank you both for just exquisite art and work that you do. Thank you. So that's pretty much all of the questions that I have. I don't know if any of the viewers have questions. And if so, I'm not sure how they will come to us, but we will try to answer them. Okay, here's a question. What was the Lumbee experience like in the Jim Crow South? It was brutal. It was, so here in Robeson County, in each American Indian population, I'm speaking from this personally and the stories that I heard from my family and elders, but Native people throughout the South experienced Jim Crow. So whether it was in North Carolina or South Carolina or other Native populations, Mississippi, Choctaw, those areas, we might have lost Lori. It really shaped the contours of what you could and couldn't do. The movie theater in Lumberton the balcony was sectioned off upstairs for Black and Indian. You had to go through to rear entrances of restaurants that would serve you. All of the kind of contours that Jim Crow defined. And it really fostered racism in Robeson County. and was very difficult. And I think that a lot of our families left Robeson County in the 50s to escape Jim Crow as much as they left to go find financial opportunities and kind of create a life. And I know that when they went to places like Charlotte or Greensboro, Baltimore, Detroit, sometimes they could be a little more autonomous in their identity, right? They didn't have to be an Indian. And, when you were fixed here in Robeson County, people knew who you were. They knew your families. Even if it was by your last name, there are many ways that they could identify you as Indian. The interesting thing that I think about as we're talking about federal recognition in this article is the sort of ebb and flow of Native acknowledgement. So for Jim Crow, we were Indians that, that fell under Jim Crow because we were Indians, but then you turn around years later after Jim Crow and we're not Indian enough. So we're Indian enough for Jim Crow, but we're not Indian enough in other parts of society or vice versa. So it's very maddening. Melinda's book is wonderful, Lumbee Indians in the Jim Crow South, written by Melinda Maynor Lowery. She writes eloquently about this and really delves a lot deeper. Let's see, we have another question. Let's see. What is the status of federal recognition of Lumbees? So the Lumbee bill has passed the House, and next it goes to the Senate. I don't know when that's slated. Do any of you know when it's slated to be heard on the Senate floor? No. So I guess that's next steps. We've been here before. I think this is our third time that we've passed the House. So fingers crossed that we'll get through the Senate, and then a bill will be on the president's desk before the end of the year. Would be amazing. Let's see, any other questions? No? Any last thoughts? We have 3 minutes.
Travis, I have a question for you, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
One of the things I liked about the photos I saw of yours is that it really shows that our people come in different shapes, sizes, and don't necessarily fit a traditional vision of Native Americans from antiquity. Were you struck by that when you went to your first Lumbee homecoming, or what were your expectations of what those portraits might look like before you took them, and then when you actually were in the process? I was
somewhat familiar with Lumbee people from previous stories, so I kind of knew. I knew. So I had met Lumbee people before, several of them, but I'd never been to a homecoming before. I was definitely surprised by a lot of things about homecoming. But I mean, that was actually kind of my goal, was to get a wide swath of people. And I actually, homecoming was amazing because it was an opportunity to take so many pictures of so many different people so quickly. And it's just a rare opportunity to do something like that. So it was, that was sort of a starting point, but I also wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a bunch of, I wanted to make sure that I included some people, for instance, in regalia, but I didn't want it to just be people in regalia. I wanted it to be, people in all different stages of life and different life experiences. So that's, actually Nancy was very helpful in, filling in some of the gaps that I felt like we had in the portraits, after homecoming. But yeah, I mean, everybody that stops by is a surprise. You never know who will say yes when you do something like this. But it was probably the most portraits I've taken for a single project that I can remember. So yeah, it was fun. It was a fun day, several days.
see, we have a question about, are there sources for Lumbee music? Yes. So I'm going to throw out some names. Jana Mashoni is a singer. Lakota John is a singer. Alexis Jones is a singer. She was actually on American Idol. Is that right, Rebecca?
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Lowery is an incredible performer. Darkwater Rising is a performer. Mark McKinney and Company are great musicians. Who am I missing, y'all? I have to give a shout out to Ramsor Records.
All of our gospel singers. We have so many of those.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of gospel singers. So hopefully we'll try to post some of those names or replay the recording and we can catch some of those. Looks like we have maybe one more question. How do we support Native businesses living in Mecklenburg? Is there a directory? That's a great question for you, Rebecca.
Actually, Metrolina has 2 board members. Jesse sits on the Business Inclusion Committee for the City of Charlotte, and I serve on the Business Advisory Committee for the City of Charlotte. And we're working with the City of Charlotte now to form a list of American Indian businesses in the City of Charlotte. So that's something we're really working on because that's such a big thing with small businesses, and the City of Charlotte is really supporting us on that. So I would say definitely check our website. Just go to our website very often, especially in 2021, and we'll start having that list up. We're working on that. Very important.
Thank you. Okay, we're at 8:02. I think we did pretty good on time, considering we had a big group. We had 2 that couldn't hang, apparently. We lost Chip and Lori, but we appreciate their time on the panel. There he is.
Hey, everybody. I think we have one more question. Is there a virtual exhibit that's available?
There's not a virtual exhibit. Well, there's lots of virtual exhibits. National Museum of the American Indian has some great virtual exhibits on their webpage, nmai.si.edu. And but we are working on a virtual exhibit that was curated by Nora Dial Stanley about the Greensboro experience. And hopefully Lumbee Indians and People in the Place can become a online exhibit in the near future as well. So that's where we are for right now, but definitely NMAI has some wonderful online exhibits to offer.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you to all of our panelists as well for this enlightening and powerful conversation. We are grateful for all that you shared about the work behind this exhibit and about your families, their history, and the contributions they made to our community. I would also like to thank you, our viewers and our members, for joining us this evening and supporting our mission. Please let us know what you think about tonight's program by completing the survey found in the chat box, because your feedback does shape the work that we do. And please come visit the museum Friday through Monday and see Lumbee Indians, a People in a Place. And also one last program to plug coming up on Thursday, December 10th at 7 p.m. We have Voices of Legacy, Sisters Unmuted. It's a discussion around the intersectional experiences of image, education, motherhood, and careers of Black women in our community. And this is held in partnership with the Pink Mentor Network. So again, thank you to Nancy. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you all of you out there viewing. We look forward to seeing you all again and hope you have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.